Now at the second stage of staining this oak door. Now I let it dry overnight, and this is actually it's bone dry. First thing to note when you do this is just run your hand over the surface of the door and you'll feel just how much the fibres in the wood have actually lifted. So what we've got to do now is we've got to take those fibres off using the steel wool, which in this case is 00 ultra fine steel wool, and a bit of sandpaper, 320 grit. So we've got to use those two things just to take those fibres down. This is called denibbing. So let's get a pair of gloves on first, because you should wear gloves for this process, because when you use steel wool it can cause dermatitis, and you really don't want that. Dermatitis can be a lifelong condition. You don't want that to happen. It's quite uncomfortable, so always wear a pair of gloves when you're doing this sort of thing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this rail first, then this rail, the bottom rail, the main panel, and then this rail here. And the process is to work the furthest part away from you and then work back towards yourself, and that just stops you getting covered in all the debris and the dirt that's likely to come off this as we rub this down with our steel wool. So how do we do this? Well, let's just take a bit of this off here, tear it off like that. It's quite simple. Roll it up like that, just loosely, and then we're going to follow the grain. Don't rub it crossways, because that will come through in the final finish, so you have to follow the grain. That's critically important, and give it quite a firm pressure is required for this, just to cut off those fibres that have lifted in the process. You see how that's changing colour all the way to the bottom, paying particular attention to the end of the timber or the door, because it's more likely to lift there than anywhere else. It'll be a little bit rougher at that point there. And go back up the door. Now it's going to take probably about 30 minutes to rub this door down, so be patient. We'll come back to that. Now I mentioned the sandpaper. This was 320 grit. Now you're going to want to use this just on the inside there, because it always turns out a bit more rough on the end there than on the top surface, and you literally fold it in half and just rub it down like that. You're not going to want to rub it down so it's glass smooth. That's not the purpose of the exercise. It really is just to make sure you get rid of all those fibres that have lifted. There you go, that's good. Now as you rub this down, you'll notice that some of the wood underneath will start to come through the colour of the ink. Don't worry about that, because this is only the first coat, and you've got at least one, possibly two more coats to go on top. Alright, good. Well, that's that bit done. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to vacuum the surface, then wipe it down with a damp rag, followed by a wipe over with a tack cloth. I think I've got it all. And then we should be ready for our second coat of ink stain. I'm happy with the surface. We've cleaned that right off, so it's down to the second coat. Same again, take it in, give it a good shake, and pour some of that ink into your pot. There we go. Close the ink, always close the lid, because if you're like me you'll end up knocking that over. But anyway, there we go. So you've got a paint. We can do exactly the same thing again, working furthest point away back towards ourselves, and we're going to follow the grain. Always follow the grain. It won't take as much ink this time round. Working quite quickly. Now it's going to take a little longer to absorb into the surface, because obviously we've already got our first coat down. What I'm doing here is I'm just feathering out from the return there, because you can find that you will get more ink just at the top and the bottom, and that again can show through on the final finish. I'm just going to make sure that's feathered out along the panel so it's not so noticeable. And see, I'm just taking it up to the join there, back along here. Okay, well that looks good. I think I've got it. You won't really tell whether it will need a third coat until it's all dried out and you probably de-nibbed it, and then you can see if any of the wood underneath is showing through. Well, having done that, I think we need to leave that for a couple of hours, probably leave it till tomorrow actually, and then come back to it, de-nib it and see what we're left with. Now, someone asked me, why do I put this in a plastic bag? Well, for those of you that don't know, it just keeps the bristles soft until I come to use it again. I always do it with paint brushes and such things, because if you're like me, I hate washing the things out, so I put it in a plastic bag and it might last me a whole week.